Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. So today I'm looking at a very unique and interesting sci-fi film, Possessor. This was written and directed by Brandon Croenberg, David Croenberg's son, and this is his second film as a director. The film stars Andrea Riseborough, Christopher Abbott, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. The film really focuses on Tasia Voss, played by Andrea Riseborough, an elite corporate assassin who takes control of people's bodies using brain implant technology to execute high-profile targets. Ultimately, her mind is put into someone else's body, and it's really about how she takes over their body and does these assassinations and does these violent things in order for the company that she works for. One particular assignment she goes on, she gets trapped in the person's head and can't seem to get out, and it really becomes a battle between the person that she's possessed, which is Christopher Abbott's character, and herself, and the clash that these two minds and wills have throughout the film, and how she's desperately trying to break free of that. Heads towards an ultimately violent, bloody ending. I really liked this. I thought it was really different, refreshing, and interesting, and I think Brandon Croenberg's definitely one to look out for. This film feels inspired by some of his father's earlier work, but it's also Brandon's own thing. It's like an extension of him in a way, through something that he's seen his father do many times. But it's definitely a refreshing film. It's definitely a really great sci-fi. It takes its time to tell its story. It gives us enough information but doesn't overload us. It allows us to work out what's going on to a point. And it's a film that really makes you think and really makes you question things. And I really love that. I thought all the performances were great. I think Jennifer Jason Leigh's solid in her little role here, but she sort of does a lot of these bit parts, but she's always good, and she is an interesting character, and I like the relationship she has with Andrea Riseborough's character. I think Christopher Abbott's solid here. He's just an actor I don't know how I feel about. He's a very internal actor, and I don't know if he expresses enough for me to understand how he's feeling. But he does give a good performance here, especially in the physicality part, and ultimately when he starts to realize what's going on, he's really great. And you sort of are surprised and shocked by his decisions and his choices, which makes him an interesting character of sorts. But I think Andrea Riseborough is fantastic here. What a great performance. She plays a character that's so removed from things. You can tell she's been doing this job for a long time. It's starting to have an effect on her. She's estranged from her husband, and she has a little son, but she doesn't know how to connect to him or relate to him in any way. There's a disconnect there. She struggles to use her emotions because in her job she can't afford to have these particular emotions get in the road of what she needs to do. The family element she has starts to have an effect on her job, and it stops her ultimately doing what she needs to be done. And throughout the film there's this way that she's able to escape from the body and go back into hers, but she struggles to do that because of what needs to be done and her fear of what might happen if she does do it. And that causes her to get stuck within Christopher Abbott's character's body and the effects that has on her psyche and the effects it has on his psyche. I think she does a fantastic job. She's definitely a character we follow down the rabbit hole. She's like Allison in many ways. This film definitely isn't as full on as I expected. There are some surprising and eye-opening moments, and the violence is pretty full on because the effects look so good. There's a scene involving a fire poker, which is pretty full on. And there's just other sequences in it that are sort of extreme but very interesting to watch. I think Brandon has a really unique and interesting visual sense. He's able to craft things in a fascinating way. The way he shows ultimately Andrea Riseborough's character, ultimately going into Christopher Abbott's mind is so well done. It's like this sequence of her being broken down and rebuilt, and it's just mind-boggling to watch. It's so fascinating. And there's so many sequences throughout it where there's a conflict where she doesn't have control of this person or that person's mind, and it sort of looks at how they're looking at each other in different ways, and the way he does that, the use of colors. There's reds, there's yellows, there's blues, and just his way of using those colors to emphasize and show this is fantastic. There's this sequence in it, I don't want to give too much away, where Christopher Abbott's character ultimately ends up wearing a mask, but the way it's achieved is just sort of unsettling, and I really loved that though. There's a sense of dread throughout the film. There's a sense of you don't really know what's going to happen next, which I find is very engaging. I would put this up there with Mandy, with Panos, and then those sort of directors who think outside the box and create their own thing and craft something unique and different. I haven't seen Antiviral, which was Brandon Cronenberg's first film. I really want to see it now after this, but I look forward to seeing what he does next, because I think he's a really inventive and unique and interesting director to look out for down the track. And I think he'll really slowly start to become into his own as we see him make more films. It's a film that really sits with you long after you've seen it, and it makes you start to wonder and question things that you've seen in the film. It's a film I think you have to see a couple of times to really wrap your head around, because there's a lot going on in it. Yes, it does give you information, enough information to get a sense of what's happening, but to truly understand it, I think you really need to watch it a couple of times. It's a film I do recommend for people who like something a bit different. Final thoughts. In the end, it's really about this woman's struggle with keeping control of her psyche. She's ultimately losing her sense of self, and it's starting to have a real mental effect on her. There's a disconnect there, and she can't seem to make sense of it, and it starts to mess with what she's been able to do within the job, and ultimately it affects her psyche in such a way that she doesn't know where she begins and this person she's taken over ends. I'm going to give Possessor 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was solid, well made. Brandon Cronenberg's definitely a voice and someone to look out for, and I think he's crafted a really fascinating, slightly disturbing, but very engaging and interesting sci-fi film. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.